Hi guys, welcome back to the Baby Sleep Magic podcast. My name is Chantal, and in today's episode I'm just going to be talking a little bit about nap fails. What to do in the event that you are out and about and your baby falls asleep in the car and you're 5 minutes away from home. This happens all the time. It happened to me, it happens to my clients. I get messages about it, I get DMs about it. It's a really big problem. So I just wanted to give you some tips and advice on what to do in the event that this happens to you or it might happen to you. Babies require naps for the first good 2 to 3 years of their life. So chances are, if it hasn't happened yet, it might happen at some point over the next however long. So look, again, like what I find is you might be out for the morning and when you're on your way home, your baby is drifting off and happens to fall asleep. You can try every trick in the book to try and keep them awake. Some tips that you could try is offer them a snack or something in the back. Now, obviously, whatever you give them has to be safe because you are driving and you don't want to have any choking hazards. So something that they can chomp on in the back of the car that's going to keep them awake and alert. Having the window down, having some songs on. I used to point out fake trucks to my boys. Oh my God, look at the bin man. That's what I used to do. And even though there wasn't a truck, it just get them looking. And by the time they realized there wasn't a truck, it worked. But you try to do every trick in the book. But look, in some cases, it's just not going to work. The younger the baby, so probably between 3 months to 8 months, in some cases, even those tricks won't work. And if that's the case, if you get home and you've realised your bub's fallen asleep in the back and it's been 5 or 10 minutes, there's a couple of options that you can do. Option one is you can, if you're lucky, you can transfer, but only transfer if you know the success rate of your transfer is going to be successful, because generally speaking, most transfers are not successful. And if they are, buy yourself a lottery ticket because it's amazing and kudos to you, tick that green box. But yeah, unless you know that transfer is going to be successful, I'd probably option B is you could either let them to have a sleep in the car. But this again comes down to depending on where you are, where your car's parked, how hot it is, the air conditioning on, can you stay there, can you watch them? There's a whole heap of scenarios that go with that. So obviously that comes into play. Option 3, which is what I advise most people to do, is to wake them up. So if it's only been 5 or 10 minutes, when you get home, wake them up. And when they're awake, they actually think they've had a good nap. They don't know they've just had a 5-minute power nap. They think they've had a really good nap. So what you're not going to be able to do is get them inside, change their bum, and put them straight to bed for their nap. That's not going to happen. They're going to kick up a stink. They're going to protest. They're going to get really cranky, and that they're not going to nap. It's not going to happen. Your moment has gone. So the best thing you can do now after their 5 or 10 minute power nap is to get them out, especially for bubbas over the age of around, 4 months. Under 4 months, you might be able to nurture them enough and cuddle them to get them back to sleep. And if you do, amazing. But most bubbas after the age of, 3 to 4 months and upwards, you need to get them up, get them out and play with them. Active, busy, stimulant playtime. You need to wear them out. You need to get them busy. You need to give them some more milk. You need to give them some food if they're on solids and wear them out. Whether it's physically, mentally, and active, they need to be knackered. And they're not going to last a full wake window because they only had a 5 or 10 minute power nap, but they will probably give you, depending on their age, anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour and a half. Sometimes even a little bit longer, depending on how old they are. So in that case, you just have to gauge their tired cues, but keeping them really active and busy is the absolute key. So if they are quite young and they're not obviously physically crawling or walking, it's just about putting them on the mat and giving them different things to hold and getting those legs kicking and getting them to roll over and just burning off calories, but also burning off some steam and some energy so they're knackered. And then whether, like I said, it's within 45 minutes, an hour or a bit longer, then you can try and opt for the nap. So this is where all your ducks have to be lined up. Get your dark room ready, get your white noise on, get the comforter ready, make sure they're full and content. That is my biggest tip. Make sure they've recently either had lunch or morning tea or food or milk or a bottle or whatever, and they go to bed on a full tummy, and then hopefully, if your timings are right, you cross your fingers, leave that room, and they have gotten themselves down for their nap. So Yeah, and look, same goes for afternoon. So what tends to be quite a common scenario that I read, hear, see, and mums are often discussing with me is the fact that when they pick their little one up from daycare, now whether they are 6 months old or whether they're 3 years of age, they can sometimes have a power nap in the car on the way home. And again, this is very, very common. They've had a huge day at daycare. Some cases they don't always sleep that well at daycare, so by the time you pick them up, they're absolutely exhausted. So a couple of tips for here, in the event that they do fall asleep on the way home from daycare, depending on how well they have or haven't slept at daycare, you could either do a little bit of a longer drive, so they get 20 or 30 minutes in, and then in hope that when you get home they've just got enough energy to eat dinner, enjoy a bath, and still go to bed at the normal time, but they're just not completely melting down in the afternoon and really frazzled and overtired. So that's probably my biggest tip when it comes to don't try to fight the daycare afternoon nap. In some cases, it's probably a bit more beneficial than not having it at all. So they're obviously falling asleep because they're genuinely tired and exhausted. You just don't want them to sleep any longer than about 30 minutes, to be honest. And again, that comes down to what their age is and what their day nap has already been like. So as an example, for toddlers in particular, they might only sleep an hour at daycare, but then they might be happy to sleep for a good hour in the car on the way home, and that's not ideal because it's too close to bedtime. So you might want to cap that at around about 30, 45 minutes at the absolute max, and depending on what time it is. So, but yeah, I would certainly encourage a bit of a power nap in the afternoon in the car, just because it will probably help with dinner, with bath, with your evening, and with them going to bed at bedtime in general as well. Because, a baby who goes to bed well rested will, in a perfect world, sleep better, and you can avoid early rising as well if they're not overtired. So, look, I hope those few tips help. Thanks again for listening. If you do find this information helpful, please feel free to share it with another mum or a friend or anyone that you know who's experiencing this, or anyone at daycare that you might think might benefit from it. And thanks again. I'll see you in the next podcast.